I'm gonna say with 2 beds, you can really do some damage. All right, so the question is, for me, has been burning in my mind for years, is can I grow enough food to eat out of my garden or really make a big dent into my grocery bill? And I'm gonna have an argument for yes, there is, and you really don't need that big of a garden. So there it is. So just to get started, I do want to say that I have 5 beds here, a small greenhouse back here, and then I have 4 garden beds over there. Now that seems like a lot. Before you turn off the video and you're like, yeah, but you've got 9 garden beds, blah, blah, blah. This month, we haven't bought any vegetables in the store at all for the past month, and we're not harvesting out of all of our beds. As a matter of fact, we're not even harvesting out of a quarter of our beds. So we're gonna go through and just kind of talk about like how we've done it and different methods that you can use to really try and, if not replace a lot of your grocery bill or all of it, to making a big dent in it with just a smaller amount of space. Just for the record, this whole month we haven't harvested anything out of this bed, very little out of this bed, and just a couple things from over there. So all of those beds, as of right now, we're not really harvesting much. There's a couple things in there, but we've harvested out of this bed mostly, that, and the small greenhouse. I'm gonna say with 2 beds, you can really do some damage. So it's rotational per season. So what that means is if you plan it correctly, you're gonna get a lot through portions of the season, and then you're gonna get a lot through the next season, and then there's gonna be times in between, but that's okay. And it also means that as a human being, we may need to sacrifice some of what we wanna eat if this is a goal of yours. So just kind of keep that in mind as we go through this. Majority of my harvesting came out of this bed here. We planted in this front row, so all of my beds are 4 by 8 feet. So they're 4 feet wide by 8 feet long. And in this row right here, for instance, we planted an 8-foot row of bok choy, and we put about 10 to 12 plants in there. I can't remember exactly. And so in that row, that was 12 different meals that we were able to have out of that. And then behind it, we had 2 rows of turnips that we were pulling out intermittently, getting some here, getting some there, definitely making a dent. And then we would have the kale that we would pull out too. Now, I don't eat a lot of the kale. There's not but so much kale I enjoy to eat, but we grow it just because. So then we came over here, and I've harvested plenty of lettuce. Look, I got a bug there. Plenty of lettuce out of here. But because I planted 4 seedlings per cell, I was able to come through and clear out each individual seedling around it and then leave the main head to grow. So we were able to do 1 whole row of lettuce. Now we've got 3 rows, but I've only harvested off of 1 row so far. Now you got to remember, this is for spring. So if we've harvested 1 row of lettuce and then the stuff out of here, and I mean, you can see on these plants, a lot of what I've harvested, I've actually given away to other people. I think I've only eaten, like, off of these 6 plants, I've probably eaten 1 plant worth. So I could cut it down to 2 plants and plant differently. But just in that area, if we took out some of those plants and then put that lettuce over there, that would be 1 whole bed. Just 1 bed right there. And those are all the meals. So here in this 8-foot row, I think if you just did 1 plant spacing, we have 12 to 16 plants. And then we came through, and like this one I haven't done yet. So you see how there's multiple plants here? We would harvest all these little ones and then leave this 1 big head here to harvest at a later date. And so we're continuously getting a harvest off of that. So I didn't even grow anything on this trellis. Now that's another option, is grow something on this trellis, have peas, and then you're getting peas, kale, lettuce, turnips, and bok choy all out of this garden. And you can intensively plant it where you're just constantly replanting if you want. So that's all in 1 bed. Think about that. Now if we come over here to this bed here, This is where we have another row of bok choy back behind us, and we've been working through that a little bit. Now, I'm going to tell you I planted too much bok choy and I got kind of tired of eating it, but it is what it is. I think I've harvested 8 cabbages right now. So 8 cabbages in an 8-foot row, that's about right, 1 square foot per cabbage. So you could do 1 square foot of 1 row of cabbage. We've been harvesting some carrots, but that's from last winter, and it's not really enough to make a meal. But we've done 6 broccolis as well. We've got 6 heads of broccoli. So you could put that in another row. You can put 8 more broccolis in another row. If we go around, I'm trying to think, I had some collards that I just finished all of my collards and my mustard. Each one of those is about a square foot per plant. So far in the second bed that I'm proposing, you've got 16 more square feet, and that's not including another trellis that we have on that bed. So you can see how if we plant right and we plant things that we can either cut and come again, plant compactively, or just keep pre-planting succession sowing over and over like radishes or something like that, then you can really get a lot out of your garden. So as of right now, we have not bought any vegetables in the past month based off of, for the most part, if I did the math and moved everything around, just right at 2 8-by-4 foot garden beds, which is, I would estimate, is probably about average small backyard garden. Now, the benefit of having a bigger garden like this is I can have stuff like potatoes planted here, I can have onions planted here, and not have to worry about harvesting, but know that I'm gonna get a harvest at some point. So that's a really good use of other garden spaces. These are all long growing crops. They're not gonna be quickly harvested. And it allows me to test a couple things and really learn more about what I want to grow and how it grows. Now I can do stuff like in these other beds here, like this bed, a quarter of it's used in the back full of carrots. Those sit for a really long time. So that's another benefit of having a larger garden, but it's not necessary in order to meet your needs. Now I do have to say the other thing is I have this cilantro right here. So I have 2 cilantro plants that just kind of got spread out, but you can get 1 cilantro plant and have your tacos with your lettuce for the winter, you know what I mean? So there's all these things that you can do in order to meet it. So you can see we've harvested a lot out of our garden, and we've only been using the 2 beds. Now, we can come through and add another bed or something like that at some point, but it's definitely possible to do so. It just takes a little bit of extra planning and a little bit of effort, and it does take a little bit more work, but if you're really passionate about having a garden and wanting to grow all of your own food, this is not outside of the realm of possibilities. Winter, we harvested a lot out of our greenhouse, and this is a 4-by-6 greenhouse, I think. But if you think about it, I have 2-by-6 foot beds, 2 of those in here. So I'm not even using the whole space, like the walkway and everything is unplantable. So just in that space in the middle of winter, we were able to cut down on our grocery bill dramatically. No, I'm not trying to trip and be like, oh, well, we could do it. And it would be really hard with just that space in order to grow enough. But you can definitely make a dent in your bill, and especially in periods of time. Now, you can't just plant whatever you want, whenever you want. You kind of got to think it through and think about the harvest methods and stuff like that. And if you throw something like a container in, then you can really even just kind of up that production even more, especially in the spring. But really in the summertime, you can up that production dramatically with just a container. So there's all these different things that we have going on, and it's like, you know, you don't have a lot of space, but you have this goal. Well, it's possible to meet the goal. We just need to educate ourselves to get to the point to where you can work that to meet that goal. And that's important. I mean, if you take this pot right here, inside this one pot, and I want to do some kind of quick planting, I think I could put 40 radishes in there. I can also put 10 turnips or 10 rutabagas in there. I can also put 2 crowns of broccoli in there. I could maybe get 2 heads of cabbages in there. So then you think of all those things I just listed, what would give me the most food to meet my, my nutritional needs in order to move me forward in my vegetable intake for the month. And it's hard to do. It's not easy. We're blessed enough to have this garden, but I see in my comments time and time after again, your garden's so much bigger than mine, but I'm doing the best I can. And that's great. You guys are doing the best you can because you are gardeners and you're growing food and you're in touch with your food. But there's so much more that we can do with our gardens, and those people that have the smaller gardens a lot of times are the ones that get really creative and grow a lot more in their gardens. I mean, for instance, this year the plan is on this garden bed behind me, like it's a 4x8 bed, right? If I plant a cantaloupe in the middle of it, it's going to take up the whole bed. But if I plant my cantaloupe on the edge of it and let it grow out, it's going to take up a square foot. That's it. And then the vines can run out into the yard and do whatever the heck they want. It's not a big deal. So just doing something just like that can make all the difference in the amount of produce that you're harvesting from your garden. I mean, look at all the trellises we have. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 trellises. That's a lot of trellises, but why are we doing all these trellises? So we can do beans. They take up no space once you put them in a trellis. They go straight up, and as far as like surface area in a garden, nothing. I mean, last year, for instance, we grew winter squash on this trellis. So on this part of the trellis here, we had a winter squash, and I don't know if you've been a long time viewer, you've probably seen it, but if you haven't, it basically grew up to about right here, and then it came down, and then it ran out all the way to right there. It was a 30-foot long vine, but in my actual garden, it took up no space whatsoever. Now, I know what you might be thinking is, oh, well, I don't have 30 feet in your garden, and you're exactly right. Or in your yard, you're exactly right. I grew it to 30 feet just because I wanted to see if I could hit the magic number. Otherwise, I would have cut it way back, long time ago, but I just kind of wanted to see what it would do. I was curious. And just for the record, 30 feet did not mean more squashes. So just to put that out there. But you see what I'm saying? Like getting creative like that will grow. You can put tomatoes on a trellis. That's right. If you grow indeterminate tomatoes, you can get them to go up a trellis. So all of these things make a difference. And when you combine every single method you can, which is not difficult, you can get a lot more out of your garden. Last thing to talk about is like, should you do it all at once? Should you just come in and just bam, I'm gonna grow everything and make the biggest damn garden you've ever seen and I'm gonna have it all? And my suggestion would be not really. No, I think you shouldn't. I think you should start small and figure out what you can get out of each bed. And I'll show you the history of this garden right here. When we moved here, this was not my first garden I ever had, but this garden, this bed right here, was the first bed we had. And we grew out of it, we got food, it was great. And then the next year we added 3 beds. And that was good. So these 4 beds were like the core section of our garden. We figured out what we could grow out of this. And then we added the greenhouse next. So we added the greenhouse and we're still figuring out what we can grow in that, but that's like a totally different beast. And then what we did, actually I take that back. Before we did that, we added the wild garden here, and this garden has been an uphill battle for multiple reasons, and we're still figuring out how and what grows in this area well. But we were able to get it planted, we've got it made, it's been through a couple restructurings. Now that we have raised beds, this is it. And then once we added the greenhouse, we came in and we put in this last bed over here in the back corner. And now we are at the point where we are just growing things to see how each one will do each bed and what suits each bed for different vegetables or fruits. I mean, would I like to have my whole yard just one giant garden? Pretty much. I would like to have half of it, add another half of it as a garden. But I think it's important to take your time and learn about what you want to grow and how you want to grow it and what method you use and what works well for your area. There's some things that grow great in this bed that don't grow great in that bed, that grow better in this bed, and just figuring all that out is imperative. Because once you build one garden bed, if it happens and everything goes crazy, I mean, I've told you this before, the original reason I started gardening was in case there was no way to get food, I would know how to grow. Once you build that one bed, then you're good. You can, if something like that happens, you can make more gardens and you know how to grow foods. So just taking your time and learning and trying to get as much as you can out of each bed is so important in my mind, because a lot of times it's just either overcrowded or way underplanted, and it's like there's a fine line in between. I mean, look at this bed, for instance, behind me. Look how packed in this lettuce is. It ain't a big deal. You can pull it up and then, you know, as soon as we start harvesting, it's going to clear out. Everything's growing just fine. There's no weeds in it or nothing like that. So we're able to get a lot of lettuce out of this 2 rows. We're not going to be able to eat all that lettuce. I'm going to get tired of eating it. I'm going to move on to something else. I'm going to get tired of this kale. I'm already tired of this kale, but it's growing. It's a food source. I'm going to continue to eat it if I have to. I won't eat it as much, but it is what it is. It's still food and it's still growing. The bok choy, for instance, I have one left in this bed. Why did I harvest that one? Because I got tired of eating it, but I will continue to eat it as I see fit. Same over here, same thing. The whole idea of I'm just gonna go to the grocery store and eat whatever the hell I want, whenever I want, no matter what season it is not a healthy way to look at it in my mind. We should be basing what we eat off of what's growing in our gardens. And if you have to supplement, you can still work your way around it. And once you start growing food, then you really know what comes in season in the year. And you know when you go to the grocery store what it is to eat. There is no way in God's green earth that I would eat an eggplant right now in April from the grocery store. Goodbye.